So first thing we want to do when replacing the gas tank on this car is probably to go ahead and take the back seat out so you can get to what right here is the cover for the fuel pump, because you're going to find in there's a place to disconnect some connections, some wire connections and fuel line stuff. So that's probably the first thing you want to do before you go any further. And actually before that, you'll probably want to go underneath the car, find the bolts where they are, and just spray them with some kind of a anti-seize stuff, like a PB Blast or something, to loosen up those rusty bolts, because if your car's as old as mine, they're probably rusty. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is disconnect the harness for the pump and all the assembly. So this plastic's pretty crappy. It probably won't even end up back on when I put it back together. But there's a little clip on the bottom. You just want to reach under and unclip that, and then probably just tuck it out of the way so it's not in your way. So then the next thing is this. In my car, this was all stuck down with like a butyl rubber type stuff. So I just got in with a pry tool and carefully pried it out so that I could see what was going on underneath. And it seems that under here is kind of a tight space. So probably what I want to do is get this harness disconnected here so I can open it up. And then the next thing I'm going to probably do is put some more of that PB Blaster on these so that they're easier to turn out, because it looks like they're probably a little bit seized. So I'm just going to go ahead and put some of this on each of these real quick. See if I can get them loosened up. I mean, they may not turn that bad, but you never know. This car is like almost 18 years old, so. And of course I'm not at a very good angle. And then also probably going to want to do this. This is like a compression fitting, so that's going to probably be pretty tight too. And then you've got some clamps. These clamps might break. If they do, then you'll just have to find some replacement ones. Okay, so we've got the screws out. They came out pretty well. It looked like in my vehicle they were 8mm bolts with a Phillips head. You're probably going to want to use a socket so you don't strip them out like with using a screwdriver you might. So then there was 2 rubber hoses with little clamps on them. These clamps seem to be okay. I'll probably reuse them, partly because I'm cheap, partly because I don't know where I would just go and get one. I'm sure probably an auto parts store. So we got 2 rubber hoses, and then we have a flare fitting. And so I just took a couple of wrenches and got on, you know, the lower one with a 19, and then the upper one with a 14, and just loosen that up. Took a little, but I lubricated it first so that it would come loose after a couple minutes. So next up is pulling this out. We're gonna take a look and see what we got in here. From everything I've seen, again, this is my first time, but from everything I've seen, these come out at kind of an angle. So we'll see what we find here. And it looks like we're hung up on the gasket a little. Your new kit, if you're replacing your tank, should have a new gasket. You're gonna want a new gasket. So if it doesn't, you're gonna need to find one. So, as you can see, you're gonna want to hold that there for a second to let the last bit of the gas drain out. And from my preliminary view inside the tank, it looks like the tank wasn't really corroded inside so much, but somehow it failed somewhere. We'll find out when we drop it. But so now that it looks like it's pretty well drained out, so you've got this float here. That's the part that tells you how much fuel you have. And then here's the end with the filter on it. And it's got like a micro screen. So actually under normal conditions, especially in a car like these Toyotas with the EFI systems, you'll never actually need to replace a fuel filter, because they found that these systems work really well at filtering out debris. and the fuel filters are built really well. So if you've got an issue with fuel in your car, it's probably not the fuel filter if you have an EFI Toyota like the Tercel is. Okay, so I'm not sure how much you're gonna be able to see under here, but you've got basically a brake line. It's for your e-brake, and you can undo this bolt because up above you're gonna see is the bolt for the gas tank. You're gonna have that on both sides towards the front of the car. Then on the back of the gas tank, you're gonna find that there's gonna be a bolt right here, and then another one over on the other side in approximately the same location. Those two were pretty easy to get to, so I sprayed them ahead of time to see if I could maybe loosen them up. I guess time will tell when I get in there and unbolt it. And they also suggest that you may want to, well, you're probably gonna have to drop the exhaust a little bit so that you can get the gas tank down and out of the way. So that's what we're gonna do now. Okay, so I've got the car up on jack stands and on ramps in gear so it doesn't roll anywhere. And I've got the bolts loose underneath where the gas tank's connected to the car. And I'm gonna bring them out, but I brought the jack underneath to hold the weight of the gas tank. Now obviously, you'd probably wanna make sure that the gas tank isn't full or even half full, because you're gonna need to at least drain that if that's the case. In this case, I've driven it till it was almost empty. So there might be like a gallon or two in there. It's a lot more manageable because you remember that, you know, liquids, you know, like water specifically weighs over 8 pounds per gallon. So you don't want a lot of weight when you're trying to manage it out, and you don't want it to spill all over everything. So jack to hold it up, and I'm just gonna go ahead and start trying to loosen these bolts the rest of the way. In my case, they came out pretty good. They weren't too seized. Depending on how rusty underneath your car is, it's probably gonna give you a good indication of the fight that you might have with the bolts. I did have one of the bolts for the e-brake cables break, but it wasn't a real big deal, and I'll be able to take that out and put a new one in, so that's minor. As far as the bolts going into the car, they were pretty good, but it does help to spray them with something ahead of time. So once these are out, and I don't want to drop it on me, that's a close one, you're going to want to carefully bring it down. I was having an issue getting some of the exhaust hanger loose. I may still try to do that, but it looks like I might have enough room to just drop it down to one side. So we'll find out when that time comes. Okay, so I'm getting on this last bolt, and the jack's helping me out by holding up the gas tank. So I'm just gonna see if I can I'm gonna try and finagle this out without, you know, dropping the exhaust too much. And you can see right here, maybe in the shot, that there's a heat shield. What I'm gonna do is take the gas tank out. If I can get it out without taking that off, I'll do that after it's off the car, and then put it on the new one. And this is just, you know, obviously gonna help the tank, so it doesn't get too hot. So at this point, you can see that the tank's pretty much loose. So the next step's gonna be to like bring the jack off from it a little, just to see if I can, you know, wiggle it out. Because now that the pump is out, the fuel pump is out, and the top is loose and the lines are loose, then I should be able to come out without having to do too much with the exhaust, but we'll find out. So one last thing to remember before we take the tank down is to make sure that our filler connection, and I believe this is like a fumes tube, but basically like for the gas, the off-gassing or whatever of the fuel. So these two have to get loosened too, because they're going to get put onto the new tank and put back in. And it's just easier to get it wherever you can and then break it loose. I had to get this off with vice grips, and then I carefully stuck a flat blade screwdriver in to sort of just stretch it, because it's been on there for years, so it was pretty tight. But then I could twist it to get it loose. So I'm going to go ahead and try and pull that off now. Alright, so that one's off. I'm going to try and get this last one off. That one might be a little trickier, but we'll go ahead and find our screwdriver here and try. You know, you want to try and reuse these if they're in okay condition. So that's something to keep an eye out for, is how good they're doing. If they're really bad, you know, you should replace them. You're gonna save yourself some headache. But if they're okay, you know, the parts stores don't need any more of your money. So we'll just try and get this last one off, and then we'll drop the tank. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and try and drop this tank now. I've gotten everything that I can loose. I think everything that we need is set. So I'm gonna go ahead and try and slowly bring this tank back down. Bring the jack out of the way. Again, it's really good to make sure you don't have a lot of gas in your tank, because you're just gonna be fighting it. It's gonna be a mess, potential hazard. So I'm gonna move this jack out of the way and see if I can finagle this down. This might be something you'd want to try, have another person, but we'll see. It doesn't feel too heavy. And hopefully there aren't any leaks on this side. And actually it looks like I might have a couple of brackets here hanging up on the system. So I'm gonna go ahead and loosen that too. Alright, so it looks like we may still have a little bit of a clearance issue. I'm going to go ahead and try and get it around the exhaust, but I may have to drop it a little lower. I kind of expected that might be the case. I was trying to be quick about it. We're just about there. Yeah, we'll probably have to drop the exhaust a little. Okay, so this is probably going to look pretty funny as I lower this, because I'm just going to sort of finagle it down if I can, and try not to drop it on myself. And I got to move this light out of there a little bit. And we should be about there. Okay, and the gas tank is now separate from the car. Alright, so we got the tank out, and everything went pretty well. Not a lot of surprises, not too many rusty bolts or anything like that. One thing I looked at while I was getting it out is that on the old tank, right in this area, this was connected down over here and in the middle. And this was just totally rusted. So the bracket was pretty weak. In fact, I just had to bend it a couple times and it broke. But I took this off and I went to the auto parts store and I just got flexible braided hose. And because both ends of the bracket, I mean a section of the fuel lines had braided hose, so I'm just gonna replace that section entirely. One thing I want to do is make sure that when I do my hose that I mark one end of the hose and the other end of that same hose, so that I know which one's which when I put them together, so I don't get them crossed. And what I did was, the old bracket was metal, but I found some ABS and I cut out the ABS about the same size, put a hole in it, mounted it on the post that the new tank came with, and then put some holes in the sides. And what I'm gonna do is the hose is gonna go on there, right about there, so that it'll connect to the pump, and then these are gonna just get zip tied into place with zip ties. And the reason I went with the ABS plastic is the plastic will probably, since it's in a safe spot, it's not gonna get in contact with the road, it'll probably outlast everything else on the car, because it's not going to rust, and it just doesn't get too hot in that particular part of the car, so it should be fine. And so again, it's just easier. You could do some metal hanger or something, but for me this was just the easiest approach to get the job done. And again, I replaced the fuel lines with fuel line safe hose that's braided, because okay, so the video cut out on me when I was talking. The battery was low. So as I was saying, I wanted to use plastic here because it's not going to corrode, it's not going to rust out, and it doesn't cost a lot. And then what I did was I zip tied it. Now, I don't know what some people think about zip ties, but I've been working with zip ties for a lot longer than I've been working on cars. And in the right situation, they're a really good fix that's cheap and easy. So I've just drilled the bracket out, put the zip ties through, that's gonna hold them. And again, what I've done is I've marked with tape the hose that goes from one end to the other so I can remember which place it connects to the rest of the system, so I don't get those crossed. And what I've done over here is I've bought these couplers that will go in when I'm ready. When I cut the hose to the exact length, they'll go in and clamp on both ends to the hose in the car, and then here, and then that'll be all set. So it'll be a lot easier than trying to replace these steel lines that are rusted out.
That's cool.
Okay, so one of the things that I did also, the new tank comes with a gasket to replace the old one. As you can see, it's that black part, and it goes underneath that silver ring with the canister with the green on it. So keep an eye on that. Make sure you carefully change that out, and you see which going. As you can see, there's fuel still coming out. See which way that fits on there, so you get it on there correctly. That's kind of important for a good seal, so you don't have nasty fumes in your car. Okay, so it looks like in this vehicle, the order for the fuel pump isn't necessarily crucial to have it the way that we took it out, because it looks like you can put the fuel pump back in to the tank and connect your lines up top. You'll still have to connect one more, the flare one, after probably, but it looks like because of the way that the fuel line connects to the tank in this section of the fuel lines, that you can put this part back on the tank before you put it back in. So essentially you probably could have dropped the tank and then disconnected this, but I know that some cars it's generally recommended that you take this off first. So either way, I think it would work. You know, you could try it out in your case. Try dropping it first, but the nice thing is you know what you're dealing with before you even go the rest of the way, so that if you need more parts, you could do that before you start. Otherwise, we're just gonna go ahead and get ready to get these connected and put the tank back in. Okay, so before I put the tank back in, because we're just about there, I'm gonna go ahead and put the heat shield from the old one onto the new one. It's in okay shape, and it comes off pretty easy off the old one. Even if the screws are rusted, they just go into a plastic clip, so they're not really going to be seized. I mean, they still could break if they're really, really bad. You'd probably replace them, but otherwise, they're just going to go on to 2 holes on one side. They're just going to slide over and clip on, and then you're going to have one more go up front, or actually towards the back. This is the front of the tank in relationship to the car. And you just get those 3 clipped on there, and once they clip in, you can mount the shield, and that's pretty straightforward. So from there we'll just screw it on. So anyway, I've got the clips on, and now I'm gonna just go ahead and line up this. It should fit right in. And I found that this tank actually works for several vehicles. I wasn't really sure. I stared at the thing underneath the car like several times before I ordered, and then I was like really paranoid because it didn't quite look, I didn't think it looked right. But this same tank works for several cars. I know it works for the Tercel and for the Toyota Paseo, but there's several cars listed that it works for. So I'm imagining that they just made them at like some factory, and then Toyota just said, okay, this will fit the car. But for whatever it's worth, it'll fit several vehicles. So don't be freaked out if it shows like several vehicles. It's not a universal, it's literally the one for this car. So anyway, I'll just tighten these screws, and that'll be the last step before we go ahead and put it back together. Okay, once again in this very awkward position facing up at my gas tank, which is now being held up again once more by my jack, and I've put some like anti-seize. It's like a paste. It's almost silver colored. I've put it on these 4 bolts. Now they came out great, but heaven forbid I have to take this out again. I want to make sure it's, once again, easy to do. And so a little of that goes a long way to help keep your bolts from getting like totally rusted into place. So, and they help with turning it in that first couple turns. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put those in. I've got all the lines back in. I do that first so I can move the gas tank around if I need. So all my hoses are connected over here. The filler tube and the vent tube are all clamped back into place. All that went in pretty smooth. So I'm just gonna line these up. Get my tank supported by the bolts. And then we'll go inside the car and finish connecting the pump, and we should be all set to pressurize the system. Okay, so I'm just getting done tightening up the flare fitting. That's the only tricky fitting you'll probably run into, as long as other parts of your line are good. So we replace that section of metal line with hose straight back to the next section of hose, and then just use some couplers and clamps. So that should be all good. I'm about to put the cover back on, and the new cover, or the new gasket, came with the screws necessary to put it all back together. I'll keep the old ones for, you know, just in case, or if I have issues getting the other ones out, if I ever have to change the fuel pump. But other than that, we've just got to put the harness back into this cover, and it's just a little like rubber gasket, so you just have to like pull on it till it gets popped into place, and then you're gonna just tuck this back in. You may want to clean this off, and that's probably what I'll do. And then you're just gonna plug this plug in, and you'll be done. Okay, so I've cleaned off around the edge any like dirt and grime, wiped it down good. All it's really necessary for is to keep like debris and, you know, snow or water or anything coming in to the cabin under the seat and then resting in underneath the seat. So just make sure you got a good seal back in there. Make sure your plug's plugged in after you've made sure all your fittings are good. And the next step's going to be to cycle the ignition a couple times to get the fuel pump to cycle fuel through and get it pressurized. And then we should be able to start the car up.